All right. Hello, everyone. Sarah here with Virtual Biz Partner, and I'm excited to talk to you all about how to build a thriving virtual assistant business. Sometimes I say successful, but I realize everybody defines success in a different way. And so I decided to call this thriving because thriving to everyone usually means, it's growing and it's doing well. So I'm going to cover a lot of information, and I really, really want to keep it to an hour just because I'm sure you all have other things to do on this Saturday. But I do appreciate you being here. And then for all of you that listen to the replay, thank you for listening to the replay as well. So I am going to switch over to some slides here, and I will send the slides to you all. And like I said, I'm going to keep everybody muted so that I can get through the content and so we can have a really good recording to send out. And then I will open it up at the end if you guys do want to ask some questions. I do have a few questions on a slide that I am asked very frequently. So I will go over those. So let me get my slides pulled up here. And then I will share these with you all. Let's see, we're going to do that. And now I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so you all, oh, it's so weird. I don't know why it's showing one of my clients. I think I'm going to turn off my video because it's showing all of the little, and for some reason it's showing somebody as a client, and it should not be doing that. So welcome everybody. Like I said, this is how to build a thriving virtual assistant business. If you do have questions as I'm going through this, feel free to put them in the chat, and then I will answer these when we get to the end of this. So if you don't know anything about me, I did start out my business in 2011 as a virtual assistant. I was just doing it totally part-time. I really had no clue what I was doing, and I usually tell people that I kind of figured it out by making mistakes, but I did do things right as well. It was just kind of an up and down process. And I first learned about it on Facebook. I saw it in a group. At that time, Facebook wasn't, not tons and tons of people on it. But I read of another individual saying that she worked as a virtual assistant. And I was like, oh, that sounds really interesting. I wonder if that's something I could do. I was really unhappy with my job. The only thing that was really keeping me at my job is that I was working from home. I had been in the office for years, but I had gotten married and moved away. And my boss said he felt like, it was work I could do from home. I did bookkeeping for them. And so they arranged it to where I would go into the office one day a week and then work from home the rest of the week. So that one day I did like 3.5 hours of driving because the office was 90 miles away. It was very long. But I was just super unhappy and knew there had to be something else out there, something else that I could do from home. So I learned all I could. I Googled things. And really, after learning about it, my first 2 months, I landed my first 2 clients. And I was only trying to get one client. And I'm not really going to go deeper into my story. I just want you all to know that, that's how I started out. I've made a lot of mistakes along the way. And so I want to share not just what worked, but what I want you all to try to avoid as you're building your business, because I know a lot of you are really, really wanting to transition from a job and replacing your full-time income with virtual assistant work, or maybe you're trying to get started. Like I was just chatting with a couple of you before we were recording this, and you guys were talking about, how you really want to get yourself out there and get clients. So let's jump into the content and what we're going to cover. I'm going to talk about what I see as the 3 biggest challenges when trying to get started, places that you can get clients so that you can, get started and grow your business. The most important thing you really need to do to be successful, and then going from employee to business owner. So that's really the transition of working for someone else to having your own business. And then I want to cover some free tools to use to get your business started, because I really feel like when you're getting started, there are a lot of things you don't need to spend money on. And, usually your goal is to make money. So it doesn't make sense that you purchase expensive software. And I like to share the tools that will help you to get started. So if any of you are listening to this and you're just not sure what a virtual assistant is, because I know what I am often asked is, how can I work from home? Especially when I'm talking to other moms that want to get started, that they just haven't heard of a virtual assistant. So I just wanted to throw this slide in there to explain what a virtual assistant is. And it's just simply someone that is self-employed that most often does administrative, technical, or creative services for clients remotely. And you do it from your home office, or wherever, coffee shop, wherever you can work and get Wi-Fi, that is, that's your office. And they are independent contractors rather than employees, so you don't get any benefits. Now, I do want you to know, though, if you do try to Google like virtual assistant positions, there are companies out there that will hire you as an employee, and the rates are often much lower. But sometimes people have gotten a good start that way. I think Zirtual, I think that's one of them. I know I hired somebody once that's where they had gotten their start, and it really built up their confidence, and then they went out on their own. So all you really need to get started with your business is a reliable computer. I say this because I once had a really old computer, and well, let's just say it was a little tough to work on that. Stable internet. I was working with someone once who, I think they lived out in the country and their internet was not very good, and we literally could not get anything accomplished. So you want to make sure you have a solid connection and then a willingness to learn. You need to continue learning skills, and we'll go into what that looks like a little bit. But really, those are the three things you need. And then once you get started, you really are going to figure out what you do and don't like. So for those of you that are just thinking of getting started, or you are kind of dabbling in a little bit, you've done some projects, do not worry about having all of your services really, really defined. Like when I got started, I just said, I'm doing general administrative work. I didn't even know what all that included. It was just the easiest way for me to get my foot in the door. And that way I didn't have to figure out all these different skills. And so, things like research, editing, creating documents, email and calendar management, customer service, some of those types of things. But I think most of you, if you're familiar with it, then you know what all those services cover. So I want to go into the three biggest challenges that people have when getting started. So the first one is doing it all. And what I mean by doing it all is trying to do everything and offer everything to everyone. So your skills and services, and we'll go deeper into that in a minute. And then setting your rates, and this can be actually setting them too high or too low in getting started. So I think people tend to think it more has to do with being too low, but I want to cover what I've seen happen and how it's held people back from getting clients when they're first starting. And then just finding clients. That's one of the big challenges, but you also are not meant to work with every single client. And so I will cover that a little bit as well. And like I said, if you guys have questions, if I don't answer something as I'm going through these, please put them in the chat. And then I will get to those at the end, and I can unmute you all to discuss them with me if I need to. So doing it all, I did this when I first got started. I was so eager and excited that I thought I needed to do it all. I thought I had to say yes to every skill a client asked. I was someone who I learned quickly, and I liked a challenge. And so when someone would say, hey, will you do, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something. Well, I know a good example for me was because I had a history in bookkeeping. I would have clients ask me to, once they learned that, they would be, oh, well, you can help, balance things monthly and do some reports. And I'm like, sure, but I really didn't like it. It was not something that I enjoyed. And then what would happen is the more I would do it, I would start to resent them. I would get burnt out. And the other side of that is maybe you do enjoy learning new things like I did, but the more you're learning and the more energy you're putting into all these different things, it can get very exhausting. And I'm actually going to give a resource to you all with this recording that gives you a list of over 100 tasks that you can do as a virtual assistant. And in my training, what I actually tell my students to do is to go through the list and circle the ones they love, put a line through the ones that they really can't stand. And then if you're just, impartial to some of them, then just leave them. And then those are the services you can start with. So you can start, if you have a ton of things circled, then go with those. If you have just a few things circled, but quite a few that you didn't mark through, then you can offer those. Now you may be thinking, okay, well, if I go through this list and now I have my services, how do I tell clients this? You don't have to tell clients the, 40 things you circle on that list or whatever that number is. It's just for you to know, so that if you're talking to a client and let's say you cannot stand setting appointments and managing a calendar. I don't like that. I had a client once doing it. It made me crazy. I don't know. I just don't like it. And so if you are working with a client and things are going great, and then they say, hey, how would you feel about taking over my appointments and managing my calendar and coordinating that? If that was something on that list you don't want to do, you need to tell them that. Now, if it's just something that you're going to do occasionally and you'd be okay with that, then, that might be a different situation. Or if it's a situation where they're going to be on vacation for a couple weeks and they just want you to manage it those couple weeks, things like that, it's okay to consider doing it, but I don't want you to consider doing tasks or services for a long term that you really do not like. So get clear on those things. And if you're still thinking, I have no idea what I really want to offer, don't stress about it too much. Just start working with clients and you're going to figure out what you don't like. That's how I started to narrow down my services, because I did try to do it all. As I did those things and would get frustrated and burn out, I'm like, okay, not going to do this going forward. Not going to, mark this off the list. So let me know if you all are having trouble figuring out what your services are going to be, but I'm telling you, every single person have things to offer. In fact, if you've not been to my website, virtualbizpartner.com, I recently created a new like freebie to give you all, and it is, there's something in my computer syncing, and I want to stop this because I don't want it to be pulling on my signal. So yeah, if you all are having trouble deciding, or if you're thinking like, what experience do I possibly have, go to virtualbizpartner.com, and in the top of my site there, I've created a 3-part inventory, and I actually give you exercises to go through your past jobs and pull skills from each of those that you can use for work online as a virtual assistant. It's really new. I've not had a lot of people go through it yet, but I would love for you to go download that if you haven't. I think it'll be very helpful. So along with that and this list they give you, you're going to have a ton of information to decide your skills. All right, so now we're going to talk about setting rates. This can be really tough and actually very controversial. A lot of people don't like to talk about money. I was kind of like that when getting started. I love to talk about it now. I am very honest about what I started at, and what I started at was too low, but I started at $10 an hour. Now, my reason, I'm not defending this, but my reason for starting at that rate was I was, like I said, still working, and I was doing this work on the side. So I had income from my job, so I didn't have the pressure of needing to like replace that at the time. And when I first started as a VA, I didn't really know the direction I was going with it. I was just doing it to make extra money. And I had been looking for a job locally where I live so that I didn't have to be driving to the office. And what happened was a lot of the jobs around here, they were offering me like $10 and $12 an hour. And I'm like, you know what? I have a 4-year college degree. I have all this job experience. I was making, I think at my job at the time, like I was making a salary that came down to like, I don't know, $18 an hour plus whatever my benefits were. I didn't get a lot of benefits. So I was honestly okay at the time with the $10 until I got started. And I'm like, everybody else is charging more than this. And then I kind of felt like I got myself trapped a little bit. But then the 2 clients, one of them was giving me bonuses and things, and it actually came out to a lot more than $10 an hour. So it was actually fine. And then the other client, I addressed it with her after a little while, and we raised it to 15, but I still really felt undervalued. And I eventually let her go as a client. We ended on good terms, but I just told her that, my skill set was growing and I wanted to be doing different things. And I felt that, my services were worth more. And anyways, so we parted ways. So things to consider as you're trying to figure out what your rates are, you really have to figure out, and my point of kind of explaining what I started at, you have to decide what feels right to you. So if you're brand new as a virtual assistant, you don't have any experience, you're probably going to have to start out on the lower end. Now, however, if you have experience, then you're going to be able to charge more. And I know you guys, a couple of you are sending, I think there's a chat, so I'll look at that here in a little bit. What services are you going to be offering, and what types of clients are you going to be targeting? All of those different things impact your rates, as well as where your clients are located. I have had clients in the past in other countries, and sometimes the currency conversion is not so great for them. And there's clients ended up not working with after a while because it was just too difficult for them. So I want you to know, sometimes your rates, it has to be what feels good for you. You have to believe it and believe that you're worth it. Because if you are talking with a potential client, and let's say you're trying to charge $30 an hour and you doubt that and you're not confident, and you feel, if you're thinking, I'm charging too much, they're not going to pay this, they're probably not, because you're not able to communicate that you're really worth that. However, if $20 feels good for you, then maybe that's what you should start at. So the average range, let's see, did I put this on no, this isn't. So the average, I have a slide in something else I do, maybe in my training. The average range, I believe, for the most part, is between $20 to $40 an hour. Now, VAs that are very specialized and do things like copywriting and graphic design, web design, they're going to be charging even more. Just because that's such a specialized skill set. And, VAs getting started, like I tell the students in my academy that when they're done, to start out charging $25 an hour, because they have some experience with software and different things, but they usually don't really have experience with clients. And, a lot of these businesses, they do have a budget. You have to make it clear to them when you're communicating, whether by email or having a call with them, that you are worth whatever it is that you are charging. You have to make that very clear. And let's see, there was something else I was going to say about rates. I don't know. I guess the thought will come back to me. But then also creating some simple packages. So I always teach to have 3 packages. And when getting started, like, do it easy. Just do like a 10, 20, and 30 hour monthly package. And that might mean that you do 10 hours a month for, whoever the client is. And maybe you bill at the end of the month, but you're planning for those 10 hours. And so if they're not giving you quite that much work, then you need to say, hey, I'm not getting quite this, the amount of 10 hours, what else do you have for me? And then the other thing about your rates is that, as you get experience, be sure and raise them. But the thing about too high, I want to touch on that for a minute. So because I do lots of hiring for clients, I'm often communicate with lots of virtual assistants. I mean, there's been positions I hire for, and I've had over 200 applicants. And I have seen individuals that will say, well, my rates are, $30 or $40 an hour. They have no experience, that maybe they were in the corporate world. Basically, they had a job that paid a lot, paid well. And so they feel that they are justified in charging that rate. But here's the thing. I understand that they had a corporate position and they made very good money. But if they don't have experience online, they're not going to be able to perform at that level that another VA at that $30 or $40 an hour with experience can perform. So you need to make sure that whatever you're charging makes sense. And so don't set them too low, don't set them too high. I'm not going to go too much into that I just want you to think about some of those things and then ultimately set that rate that feels good for you. And rates, like I said, it could be a whole much larger conversation, but that's just kind of the meat of what I want to share with you about that. And the other one is just finding clients. And I'm actually going to go a little bit deeper into this too. But finding clients, I wanted to list a few places, specific places, but then also give a little bit of a warning with a couple of them. So hiremymom.com, that's where I got started. I think it's an amazing site. I'm not on there now just because of like the work I do. I don't do virtual assistant work anymore, and a lot of my clients come to me as referrals and things. But from what I hear, they still have a lot of jobs. Now, what I do remember about Hire My Mom is that a lot of the clients would list what the rate was they were going to pay. And I did remember the rates being a little bit lower. But again, I was getting started and you know, I was okay with that. Now you may be thinking, well, I'm not an employee, I'm an independent contractor. They can't say what they want to pay me. Actually, they can say what they want to pay you. The thing about an employee versus independent contractor is to be considered an employee, if you are working for a client and that's your only client, and they're setting your rate of pay, they're telling you when to work and how to work, technically you're an employee. But let's say you work for multiple clients, you set your hours, you know, of course you use all your own equipment, but they are like, well, I can only pay $15 an hour. That doesn't make you an employee if you accept that. Like that's, and so I just kind of want to, I'm not giving legal advice, like I'm not a lawyer, but I do just want to touch on that because I see a lot of controversy when someone will list what they're looking to pay, or if they want somebody to fill out like an application or questionnaire. Again, filling that out is not the same as an employment application or questionnaire. So just kind of keep that in mind. Craigslist, I've heard people say they find clients on Craigslist. I personally have never used it. Upwork, now I know Upwork is getting more and more virtual assistants, and sometimes if you go on there, if you're new to it, sometimes they won't accept you, and you need to be careful, I guess, about like what skills, like if they feel they're already oversaturated with virtual assistants, then they're not accepting anymore. I don't know, recently I do train my students to definitely go check it out and set up a profile. I know when I was first getting started, Elance was around. Now Upwork, well, they've bought, they're all in one now. They've kind of changed, things have changed. But definitely go check it out. It's worth looking at jobs, and that is where my assistant got her start. She got her first few clients on Upwork, so it can be a great place. Facebook groups where business owners hang out. They will often post about needing a virtual assistant or other virtual assistant groups. Again, sometimes clients will go into virtual assistant groups knowing they can find them a VA, or other VAs will be looking for people to help subcontract or take on some overflow work or just projects here and there. Online business managers, this one's often overlooked. So I'm a certified online business manager. I took my training through Tina Forsyth. She has an awesome program. She has a directory, and I believe you can go through it for free. And because online business managers are often hiring virtual assistants or looking for virtual assistants to refer, if you network with them and find a few that you know get along with and you connect with, those can be great people to be able to refer clients to you. And then I just put referrals here. So this can be once you actually get started, when you are, especially if you're just doing like project work, or if you just have one or two clients and you definitely have capacity for more, let those people you're working with know that you can take on clients. Or again, just people in your network, people, you know, say, hey, I am looking to do this certain type of work. I have this availability, you know, here's how to contact me. Always make it easy. And I want you to, when doing these things, when finding these clients, I was just talking to somebody before I started recording. She was talking about a client that really needs her help, but they've been so busy that they haven't had time to talk. What I want you to do is be keeping a spreadsheet of any potential client that you come in contact with, and you know, put a link to their website if you have it. Of course, put their email and their name on there. And I want you to be putting columns for like the first initial contact, and then follow up like a week later. And then if you still don't hear from them, follow up, another week later. I usually do 3 follow-ups, and then if I haven't heard back after the third time, then I just don't worry about it. But they do get busy. I mean, that's why they need help. And then what was the other thing I was going to say about the follow-up? Oh, if you make notes. So like if you do hear back from them and they're saying, oh, well, I'm going to be out of town or this or that, just make sure you make note of it. And don't say, well, you follow up with me. No, you as the virtual assistant follow up with them. You need to make it easy for them. And if it's someone you were talking with and they hire somebody else, what I always did was I would always follow up 30 days later, because there were times that virtual assistant they hired did not work out. And if you pop back into their inbox and make it easy for them, they're very likely to be like, I'm going to give this person a chance because this other one's not working out and I really need some help. So I want you to check out those places. There's definitely other freelance sites, but I didn't go into them because it's just, I haven't found them to be quite as great for landing clients. But yeah, so I just want to go deeper into clients. So a lot of times I do hear virtual assistants talking about, not being able to get clients, or they say they just want the lowest rates. They're not really valuing them. And so going a little bit more into this for a minute, I know when you're getting started, it can be a little nerve-wracking. It can be scary. There's a lot of fears that can come up and things around confidence. But honestly, saying these things, this actually has more to do with your attitude and your beliefs than them. So if you start telling yourself, I always find my ideal clients and they value me and they pay me for what I'm worth, you're gonna look for that. So my point is, whatever you think about is usually what you see. So if you're thinking of the negative and about not getting clients and always the lowest rates, that's what you're gonna see. That's what you're gonna find. So I want you to start paying attention as you're going about your day and thinking about your thoughts. I know that sounds funny, think about your thoughts. But if you do find yourself having these thoughts, I just want you to start writing the opposite down. So I know that's what I did. And after you do that for a while, it's going to totally change your way of thinking. And you're going to start finding those clients that are perfect for you and do want to pay your rates. But again, you have to be confident in that. You have to know it, you have to own it, and you have to be able to express that in everything. So I even sometimes tell people, like, be careful about the things you post on social media. So if you're trying to get clients and you're posting things about always being sad and negative and things never working out for you, clients are probably going to pass you up if they go to check out your social media, like your personal page. They do that. They want to know who you are as a person. And if those are the things coming across, if you've always got a problem, then they're going to think that this person is always looking at the negative rather than how to make things better or to look for a solution. So there is really a lot we could go into that, but I just want to share this quote with you. It says, "Believe in yourself. Underconfidence leads to a self-fulfilling prophecy that you are not good enough for your work." And so that's really what I was trying to explain, is that if you do not believe in yourself, that's the reality that you're going to create. So, and I want you to have the opposite of that. So I do things to surround myself with little reminders. I have pictures in my office that make me happy. If I'm having a rough day, because we all have rough days, things happen. What can you do to cheer yourself up and to put yourself in a better mood? I mean, it can be something so simple as making a cup of hot tea, or looking at some photos of really happy times, or reading a book that you find encouraging. In fact, if you're thinking right now, like, I really need to make some changes with my attitude, then maybe jot down 3 to 5 things that you could start doing to kind of change that and flip that around. So a little bit more into getting clients, because I really do find this to be one of the biggest pieces that keep virtual assistants from really starting and growing their business. which, as we've kind of talked about, can branch out into several different areas. And I see it. See, I knew I had a typo in here, and then I couldn't just find it. So what I talked about here, decide your services, have your rate set, and then have your packages. Decide the types of clients you want to work with. So I've not touched on this that much in this webinar, but I really want you to know who you want to work with. So it could be that you want to work with people in a specific industry. You can want to work with doctors, you could want to work with authors, or you may want to work with people that are parents, or work with families, or maybe, there can be it could be somebody that's in your time zone. I've worked with clients in Australia, and I got to a point where I decided that was not a good idea, because they could only do meetings, or we could only do meetings at night, because then that was their morning. Every other time was like during the middle of the night. So think about how you want your business, what you want your business to look like, and what types of clients will fit into that. And that's actually going to help you to find clients too. When you're looking at those places that I mentioned, when you know what you're looking for, it's going to be easy to find it. So kind of think about like buying a new car. When anybody goes, it doesn't have to be like brand new, but just buying a car that's new to you, you usually have in mind kind of what you're looking for. It would be really hard to buy a car if you had no preference and you're just like, oh, anything. And then, the salesman shows you a car, you're like, oh, maybe, but let's look at another one. You could just look forever and ever and ever. But if you go and okay, I need an SUV, I need it to fit my 3 kids. It needs to have good gas mileage. It needs to have these features. Like, you're going to be able to find that new car a lot faster than if you just went in saying, oh, anything will do. And because then what might happen too is, let's say you go in with the attitude, and let's say you're just in a hurry and you're like, oh, I'm just going to buy the first car that I see. And then you find out that the insurance is high and the gas mileage is terrible and your repairs are expensive. And now you're stuck because you've got this loan on this car that you can't stand. It's because you didn't decide beforehand what you were really looking for. And so I see this happen with virtual assistants and clients. The virtual assistant will be like, well, I'll just work with anyone. It doesn't matter. I just need to get clients. And then they get a client, and then they can't stand it because it's not really, they didn't really put thought into who they wanted to work with. And then that virtual assistant might say, oh, this client is, frustrating, and they do this last minute, and well, did you really think about that beforehand? So kind of consider that. And then when you're looking for those clients, it's going to make it much easier to identify the types that you want to work with. And then remind yourself how great you are and that you only want to work with those ideal clients. So like I was just kind of saying, really repeat that to yourself every day. And I even put make sticky notes, put reminders on your phone, whatever you need. So I have in my bathroom 2 little sticky notes. I have a printout beside my desk up on my wall. I have a dual monitors, and I have a sticky note on one of my monitors. I have a sign. It's like a Wonder Woman poster. I'm looking straight at it, and it says "She can do it." My brother actually got it for me. But my point is, I have little, just little things that I look at every day that remind me of what I want and what I want to create. And don't let anybody influence that. And what I mean is, sometimes getting started, we can let our family or our friends sometimes bring us down because they don't really understand what it is we're going after. I think because this work is something you can't see it, you can't touch it. If you're going to the doctor, that's easy to understand. You're going into the office, you can see the equipment, you see the receptionist, the doctor gives you an exam. People understand that. And I think sometimes with this work online, because you're sitting at a computer, I think sometimes people think it's not real, or it's just you just have a dream, you just want it easy, or you just don't want to work. And my point is, as you're creating your business, don't let those people outside of you rain on your parade. And if it's friends doing that, you may need to cut them out of your life, because a true friend is going to encourage you, and they're going to support you even if they don't understand it. And Same with your family. If your family doesn't 100% understand what you're doing, that's okay. I recently did a video. I've been doing this years, and I recently did a video because my mom was like, now, how do I tell people what you do? Like, I'm not really sure I get it. And it used to bother me, but like, it's totally okay. But they support me. And so if you have like a spouse or, you know, somebody in your immediate family that you see all the time that's doubting you, it's going to be very difficult to get your business running and to have it be thriving. So you definitely need to have a very open and honest conversation with them. And, you know, if it happens to be a spouse that doesn't understand it, it's okay to address those fears and concerns. And if they don't understand how you can make money or how you can get a client, you know, maybe make a deal with them and say, okay, you know, I get it that you have some concerns and you don't fully understand this. That's okay. But let's set a time frame of 90 days, or, you know, I don't like anything less than 3 months. Because if you're someone that maybe if you're still working and you have kids, like that can be a lot to try to get your business started and a client. So I don't like anything less than really 3 months because I don't want you to have too much pressure. But sit down and just say, okay, give me 3 months. And don't go crazy. Don't try to set unrealistic goals, but definitely talk with them. So I just wanted to share that. That wasn't really anything that I had as part of a slide, but it's something I hear about more and more, is about somebody not supporting someone starting their business. And I don't want you to take on their beliefs. Like, honestly, that's their problem if they don't believe it. If you believe it, then you go rock your business and do what is going to make you happy and figure out a way to make it work and find some way to ignore them. So back to very important factor that you need to be successful. And this still has to do with getting the clients, and it has to do with the sales. But what I really mean with sales is the communication you have with potential clients, all the way through to like closing the deal. And if you can be the best virtual assistant in the world, but if you cannot express this, then you will never land a client. So you have got to figure out a way to communicate this. And it really has to do with just explaining how much you can benefit them. And so I actually say the proposal is the first step in the sales process. Technically, it's the email you send or the call you have with them. But sometimes you send a proposal and you've not actually spoken with them on, a phone or anything. But that's why I say the proposal is really the most important piece, and then the interview is the second part. So it really just depends what that first part of communication is. So like on Hire My Mom, oftentimes they'll have the job listed and they'll say like, send me a proposal or how you can help. And then if they like that, then they set up the interview. So again, if you cannot express through your writing that you're confident and explaining how you can help, then you need to get good at that. And you also need to practice doing interviews if you feel that you are someone who does not communicate when speaking about how you can solve their problem. So what I want to, and this is actually touching on what I shared a little bit earlier, but what I want to really, really stress about that communication piece is listen more than you talk. Don't go on and on in written communication about an award or an accomplishment at a past job that has nothing to do with virtual assistant work. So the biggest mistake I see is when I am hiring and I have virtual assistants sending me emails or proposals, whatever that first part of the communication is, and they don't address anything about what I listed needing help with. So let's say I list that I need help with social media. So I'm primarily on Instagram and Facebook, and I am looking for a social media virtual assistant. So I get a proposal, and let's say this virtual assistant is perfect. They have all the skills, they're amazing, but they don't explain that. Instead, in the email to me, they say, hi, don't use my name. And they're like, my name is so-and-so. I have 10 years experience doing social media for businesses, like whatever, let's just say it was like, traditional businesses. They're not really, haven't worked online. And then they said, at my one job, I won an award for such and such and such. And they go on to tell me how great it was. And they're like, I'd love a chance to talk to you. They think what they've done by telling me about that award and their years of experience, they think they're explaining how they can help me. But nowhere in that email did they say, I see that you're on Facebook and Instagram, and I've not been working with online clients yet with social media, but when I was employed and working on social media, I was able to learn what I needed very quickly and to grow the following. And so I have no doubt that I can do the same with you. And what I would love to do is in the next 30, if we could do a 30-day trial, and what I mean by 30-day trial is, of course, they're getting paid. It's just like kind of a verbal agreement that if at the end of it, it's not working, there's no hard feelings. It just kind of takes some pressure off when you say that. But they're like, if at the end of 30 days, you've not seen an increase in following and more engagement, then, so my point is, whatever a potential client lists needing help with, write something about that. Use their first name. People love hearing their name. Keep it simple. I really don't like messages, emails, whatever, being more than like 3 or 4 paragraphs, and they better be short paragraphs because I'm reading through a lot. And don't give them things they didn't ask for. So if they don't ask for a resume, don't send it. If they do ask for, send it. Just really try to think about it from the viewpoint as if you were the client. Would you want to read through what you just received if you were getting 20, 30, 40, 50 people, even more, contacting you? Does it make sense? Is it to the point? And does it answer how you can help? So let's say you've gotten that part down, and so the first piece is the proposal, the second piece is the interview, and the third piece in what I call the sales process is the follow-up. So this is what I was talking about when I was mentioning the places to find clients. And this is what VAs really leave out. I was just talking to somebody in my training the other day, and she was talking about getting her ideal and dream clients. And I'm like, where are you with your follow-up? And she's like, I haven't done it. And I'm like, well, have you created your spreadsheet? No, I haven't. And I'm like, I just wanted to shake her and say, please do this. And that was actually like the thing I told her to focus on. I said, I want you to go now, and I want you to follow up with those people that you have reached out to. And she's like, well, they may have lots of messages or that. I'm like, no, that is not displaying confidence. If you want to work with them, you have to show them you want to work with them. So if you reach out to a potential client and you don't hear back in 5 to 7 days, send a follow-up email. Have it be short, don't be long. If they said they would contact you and they didn't, follow up within a week. Don't be like, oh, I don't want to bother them. I don't want to, no, bother them. Send them a message. And then if they reply that they went with somebody else, follow up a month later. So like I said earlier, sometimes they don't work out. And if your rates were too high, follow up anyways. I had somebody once that I think I was charging like 30 or 35 at the time, and she said I was too high. She went with somebody else. I followed up a month later, and she said, you know what? I went with someone else because their rates were lower, but they couldn't do what I needed. So I'm going to give you a shot. And then you know what happened after we started working together? I did things so much faster. It really wasn't, she wasn't out any more money, and it was perfect. So I just want you to think about that when you're doing your follow-up. So like I said, make that spreadsheet, please. Like I'm begging you, do the spreadsheet. I promise. I have worked with clients. So I have a spreadsheet back from, well, it was back from 2013, but now since I don't do VA work, it's a little different. But anyways, my point is I followed up with someone this last year that I had met about 3 years ago, and she just wasn't ready to work with me. And we did a project, and it was, I believe it was a $2,000 project. And it was from a simple follow-up. And she's like, oh my goodness, your email, because I was offering a different service, and I wanted to just follow up and say, hey, you might be interested, how's business? Just short and sweet. And she's like, I so need this. Like, let's get on a call. And got on a call, did the project. It was awesome. So you never know when someone might need you. Even reach out to people that are not hiring right now. If you identify a business that would be perfect for you, but yet they're not yet hiring, contact them. They may not be ready for you now, but they might be later. In fact, I just did a Facebook Live go to my page if you're not following me on Facebook, and there is a Facebook Live I did about that. Okay, so I'm going to briefly cover the tools because then I want to get into the questions you guys have sent. So I'm going to go through this quicker because you can see on the slides what these tools are. But the tools that I suggest you use to get started is just use Gmail for email. And so use the Google Drive or Google Apps that comes with the Gmail. And like I said, just the free one. You don't need to do the paid one when getting started. If you're going to be sending newsletters for your own business, use MailChimp. I suggest holding off. You don't need to have a website yet. You really don't even need a Facebook page yet. But if you are going to be sending newsletters or emails, I just suggest MailChimp because it's free. Asana for project management and tracking to-do items. Hootsuite or Buffer, I kind of go back and forth between the two. But Hootsuite or Buffer, they both have free accounts if you are on some social media platforms. Now they're limited. You can only do, I think, like 2 or 3 with a free account, but it'll automate it. So LinkedIn profile, this is huge. I don't think you should waste time on a website when getting started. And all I'm going to say about that is because when you're getting started, you change your mind so much that it ends up taking a lot of time and energy to change and make updates on a website. And it's also money you don't need to spend. Use your LinkedIn profile. I think I went close to 2 years without a website. I did not do a website until I was fully booked. And then I still should have waited. I still didn't need a website. Canva for graphics, documents, ads, and more. You're probably not really running ads right now, but if you are doing anything on social graphics for, or just creating documents, I tell my students to create like a one sheet of their skills and a blurb about them, and you can make it pretty in Canva. Zoom has a free account, and I suggest using it for client calls and video meetings. Zoom to me has been, that's what I'm using now, and it's always been the most reliable as opposed to like Skype. I used to use Skype, but anymore Zoom is, and once you get to the needing a paid account, its prices are really good. And then Dropbox. So I use Dropbox and Gmail. Dropbox, I tend to put more of my like audios, videos, or things like that. And then Google Drive. Oh, I should mention too, with my Gmail and Google Drive, I use the calendar there as well. And you can also get a free Google Voice number set up for the phone if you're in United States. Come to think of it, I don't know that you can do a Google Voice number if you're outside of the States. You can still definitely use everything else. But with Google Drives, you can also do like forms and surveys. So if you want to really get fancy, you can do that. So I'm not going to go into more of those tools anymore. You can Google them to get started. So going from employee to business owner, I just really want to touch a tiny bit on the transition. I know a lot of people can get a little bit stressed. Here's what I'm going to tell you to do. This is what I suggest before quitting your job. Start working as a VA on the side to make sure you like it. Some people don't like it. Some people don't like the isolation. There are things you can do about that. Going to, co-working spaces or coffee shops if you have those near. But try it out. Make sure you like it. Just do some project work or side work. This is a big one. This is what I did. A lot of people say, okay, I'm making, $50,000 a year at my job. That's how much I need to do to be able to quit. Okay, do you really need that much? Like, have you figured up your bills? Is that how many bills you really have? Because if you only need $25,000 to pay your bills, then you just cut that in half. And how much relief would that be if you realized, this is going to be my first goal. And as long as my bills are covered, then I can quit and then I can build it up. So I see a lot of people make that mistake. They think they have to immediately make the same amount they're making at their job. But what I want you to think about is, what do you actually need for your bills? And I know it's going to look different for different people. If you're married, then your spouse has an income, hopefully, and maybe that will take off some of the burden. But if you're single, like I'm a single parent, after I got divorced, I had to make more money because I had more bills and I don't get any financial help. So make a spreadsheet, see what you actually need, and then figure out if you'll be okay without benefits and what to do for insurance. So some individuals, I've heard they'll quit their job and they don't get any quotes for insurance, and then they freak out because they're like, oh my gosh, I can't afford now to pay insurance for me and my kids or whatever it is. I have to do like the Obamacare, I go through there. But it is based on your income. And so when you have your own business, you're probably not going to be making much money initially, and you can really get some discounts on your insurance. So it might be worth talking to someone who actually is educated and that's what they do for a living. But I just want you to think about it. I don't want you to quit your job too quickly and then be worried about benefits. So when I quit mine, I was married. My son and my stepdaughters were on my husband at the time on his insurance. So I wasn't worried about that. So I just had to get myself on insurance. So I knew there was going to be a huge expense. Like I said, he at the time had a decent job and good benefits. And then of course, now being single, like I said, I have to make more money and things are a little bit different. So take those things into consideration. All right, so to summarize this, because I'm really trying to keep this within the hour and then answer y'all's questions. So I want you to do these steps to start building your thriving virtual assistant business. I want you to determine your services. And you can use the list I'm going to send you, or go to my website and also download that 3-part inventory. Set your rates and with confidence. And then if you want to take that a step further, do packages. But if you just want to keep it simple, you can just do it hourly and figure it out from there. And then start looking for clients at those places I suggested. So the different websites, start doing the networking, really believe in yourself, create daily reminders. I am telling you, like, I have made some huge shifts and really believing in myself. Like, I mean, I always have, but even recently I've changed some things up, and happy to answer questions if you guys want to message me later, just because I don't want to go too much into it. But one thing I will say about that is if you are starting your business and you're thinking, well, what's my plan B or what's my backup plan if this doesn't work? Your business probably isn't going to work. When I quit my job to do this full time, like, there was no backup plan. I remember my dad asking me, you must have been scared. No, I wasn't scared. I was so excited. I had clients, I had income. A big client actually fell through right after I quit my job. I wasn't worried. I found clients right away. Like, to me, there was no other option. This was going to work. And if I did something and it didn't work, then I would do something else to make it. Like, I would, if I messed up, if I worked with a terrible client, there's always another client. There's always something else I can try. And so I just really want to get that through to you, that if you're looking to do this, you've got to say, like, this is it. Like, I'm going to make it work. I'm going to do whatever I have to do to make this work. And your business can look however you want it to look. I just want you to know that. So it doesn't have to be full-time. You could structure it however and whatever you're wanting this to look like. And then submit those proposals and follow up a second and third time, please. And then sign up for the free software, both to use in your business and to start getting experience with it. Because then what you can say to these potential clients is, hey, yeah, I love Google Docs. I love using Asana for project management, whatever it is. And you can just tell them that your experience is using it within your own business, but that you're familiar with it and you've been using it. So just be honest. And then if you're still working a job, whether it's part-time, full-time, whatever, create your plan of how much income you actually need to cover your bills to transition into your own virtual assistant business. So I've kind of answered some of these questions here. Nobody really gets what I do. How do I make people understand? First of all, it's not your job to make them understand. They should support you, but they don't have to get it. Do I have to have a website? Nope, I touched on that briefly. And like I said, these are questions that I get asked a lot, and then I'm going to jump into you all's questions, and I totally understand if anybody has to jump off, because I know we're at the hour. But do I need a website? No. And so the other thing too that I didn't really explain very much about a website was that what happens if you do create a website early on. I said that oftentimes you'll change your services and the direction and what you want to do. Well, a lot of times then those websites don't get updated, and then you're like, yeah, I do social media. And then somebody goes to your website and your website just talks about research. I'm just like using that as an example. And so what happens with me, like when I'm hiring, I'm like, well, wait a minute, now I'm confused. What do they do? Because then what I think is they're just telling me they do social media because they just want me as a client. They don't really care about the work. So don't do a website, just get your LinkedIn profile filled out and up to date. How long will it take me to get my first client? I had my first 2 clients in my first 2 months. It really just depends if you do the things I told you to do. Have you defined your client? Have you been sending proposals? I mean, I would almost guarantee that you can get a client within 30 days if you start reaching out every week to 5 to 10 potential clients and then following up with them. If you do that every week, in 30 days, you should have a client. And if not, then you're not doing something that I've told you to do early on in this webinar. So maybe go back and listen to it. And then I hear people talk a lot about choosing a niche. What does that really mean? So I don't think you need to worry about this early on. Choosing a niche just means, I did say, you could choose the types of clients you want to work with. I want to work with doctors, or I want to work with whatever. That's kind of choosing a niche, but a niche just means being very focused and selective on working with a very certain, so some people might say, I only work with like spiritual entrepreneurs, or I only work with people that are into yoga and the yoga industry. That can help you know who to target as clients, but sometimes early on, you don't know who you want to work with. So if you don't know, like if you're like, I can't really identify my ideal client, and I really don't want to choose a specific niche, just pick some of those general services and go with it. You'll figure it out. So you don't need to worry about that. So I'm super excited. I'm going to jump to your questions. And then on this last slide here, just watch your inbox for the recording, the list of 100 plus tasks that you can do, and then a special offer. And I'm going to tell you about a special offer for my training academy. If it's not the right time, I totally get it, but I do go a lot more in depth and offer a lot of support in there that'll really help you to structure your business in a way that works for you. But I am going to go to the chat questions now. Okay, so, all right, so I was reading over a little bit of this already about being too nervous. Yeah, just put yourself out there. I'm just telling you, like, I have a quote in my bedroom that says something about, the only way through fear, something about the only way with fear is it's not around it, but through it. So really with fears, you just have to like do it. You just have to like barrel right through. When we want to say no, should we be offering with someone? You can. So if you're talking to someone and you want to say no either to a skill, like I gave the example of bookkeeping, or if you are just totally saying no to the client, because I have done that, you can refer someone. Now, let's use the bookkeeping example. So I do, even occasionally we'll get someone that says, oh, you have a background in bookkeeping, you can do my books too. And I say, no, that's not a service I offer, but I'm happy to refer you to someone that does offer that. But now there was a potential client once that she made some very rude remarks. We were different races, and she made some very rude remarks to me about that because of the fact that I was white and I wouldn't get her community and some other things. I was still very professional on the call, and I told her I needed to think about things. And I followed up, and I just told her that I didn't feel that we would be a fit to work together. And I did not refer her to anyone because the fact that me being white was such a big issue, I didn't really understand why it was. And she said some very crude things on the call about white people specifically. And I could have referred someone that was the same race as her. But it gave me a really bad feeling, and I didn't want to put somebody else in that situation. I felt like I'll leave it at that. So I think when you refer someone, another example was I had somebody that I ended up saying no to because she made it sound like she was going to pay me. And then she's like, well, actually, I'm just getting started. So if you could like work for very basically little pay, and then once we get things going, then I'll increase it. I said no, because usually situations like that, they don't generate the income that they think they're going to generate. And I didn't want to put somebody else in that position. So I think you just have to trust yourself in that situation. And if you want to say no, if you know someone to refer to them, say that. And if you don't, and if it's hard, if you're on a call with them and you don't want to like say no on the call, then follow up with an email like I did. Because especially if it's kind of emotional, or if they've triggered you on something, like the person that kind of triggered me and by not wanting to work with me because of, because I wasn't the same race, which was ironic because she was referred to by someone. You never know what's going to happen. Just trust yourself. But no, don't ever feel pressured like you have to refer someone to them. If we have experience as administrative assistant, we start at the lower end of the pay scale. Not necessarily. And the lower end of the pay scale, it totally depends on, everybody has a different idea. And in fact, if you want to message me after this privately and talk about rates, because I know it can be, to put it out there, can be, just kind of difficult. It just depends. Like if you have a lot of experience with like email management and calendar management and setting appointments and coordinating things, then a lot of that experience is going to translate to online. And so you could definitely start out charging more. I don't think you have to start out on the lower end, as long as you're confident about that. Seems like the types of skills would determine rates too. Yeah, charge more for web graphics and web. Yes, so you can definitely charge more, especially when you specialize. So graphics and web design, especially if you do design like through Photoshop, or what's the other one? Illustrator. Now, if you just use Canva, then those graphics, that's not considered necessarily as specialized because, it's like pretty user-friendly. But yeah, web maintenance, web graphics, anything that requires a higher skill set, definitely. And do you recommend retainers or prepayment? So I'm really glad you asked. So for something like, let's just talk about this. If it's web maintenance, I would actually recommend like a flat rate that you bill at the beginning of the month for something like that. Now, if you're doing administrative work and you're just getting started, a lot of clients can be nervous about paying up front, because I actually had a client that did this, and the girl was terrible and we had to let her go, and she kept all of his money and had did hardly any work. And so the next person he hired, he's like, I'm not paying up front. Like, I just can't do it. He's like, after we have a relationship and I can trust them and like, then I can do that. So, sometimes, especially if the client has not worked with a virtual assistant before, they may be a little nervous. And so you could do something like, hey, would you be okay paying, 50% upfront and 50% after the fact? Now, if it's like web design or graphics, web design, I've always had that build out, whether for me or clients, in like milestones, like 25% upfront, another 25% halfway through, and 50% on completion of the job. If you're working hourly, you can't really bill up front, like administrative hourly work. Now, design work or like bookkeeping are things where maybe you have set rates. Then, so my designer, like, I know I had her do, I forget what it was, but like, she did something and she quoted $250. And so she sent me the invoice and I paid her. But now sometimes she bills me after the fact, because there'll be extra things. Like, I was having her do something and then I'm like, oh yeah, I also need a graphic for a Facebook ad, and I also need a cover page for like a product graphic or whatever. And so then it ended up being a little bit more, and so I just paid her after the fact. So you kind of need to figure out what works for you, and it really depends on what you're doing. If you're, like I said, with the website or something you're delivering, doing lots of work, you definitely want to be getting paid as you're going. So hopefully that helps answer that. And then if you've contracted for 10 hours a month, if you only used 8, are you obligated to roll over? You're not obligated. So it really depends, again, what you want to do. So here's what I do. I do, for my business management clients, I have retainers. I have 20 hours is my smallest one. And so what I say, 20 hours a month, and they get billed on the first of the month. And then I tell them if they don't use the hours, it'll get rolled over to the next month, but they expire. So if they have 2 hours left and they don't use them, then they expire. Now you may be thinking, well, what if they never, every month they're not using them and you always have hours that roll over? You know, usually you can identify things your clients need. And so what I always suggest and what I've done is that if it's, let's say there's 4 weeks in the month and you've gotten through 3 weeks and you've only used 5 of the 10 hours, you know, you should be letting them know, say, hey, you know, you've got 5 more hours. What else could you use help with? So if you roll them over, you can, but you can also not. You could just say, you know, 10 hours a month, especially with a small amount like that. I would just say, you know, they expire at the end of the month. But I did have somebody that I was trying to work with once, and she did that. She billed at the beginning of the month. She was never getting things done. And so I'm like, well, you don't have time. And so I'm just going to lose my hours because you don't have time you're too busy. So just kind of think about it and maybe be willing to be a little flexible in the beginning, because you want to make sure that it works. So this is what I would maybe suggest too, if you're getting started. Maybe for the first like 60 or 90 days, you could tell them, okay, let's do a 60-day trial. And we're going to do 10 hours a month, and we're going to see how that works. And if we're using all of that time. And, you know, even tell them like, hey, I can make some suggestions of additional ways I can help you or additional things that I can do. And you're going to figure it out. Like once you start working with those clients, you're going to really figure out what, and the clients that don't use that time, honestly, usually end up being the clients that they're kind of scattered and all over the place. And you're probably not going to want to work with them long term. So what you could do too is when you talk with someone and agree to start working with them, like if they need help with administrative stuff, and let's say they have 10 different tasks they know they're going to need help with, then maybe you come up with a few more and say, okay, you know, if we end up having time left, I could also help you do these things. How would that sound? Clients love it when you look for ways to help them. So one thing that's going to be really important for you all as you're getting started is to have like a short weekly meeting, even if it's like a 20 or 30-minute meeting. And you can check in with those clients. And if they're really busy, say, well, what is it you're doing? And if they say they don't know, ask them, say, well, you know, could you just jot down for a few days, like what you're doing, and then give me that list. And then I could tell you what I could then help take off of your plate. So those are exact things I've done with clients, because the thing is there's always work to be done. So if you do think about or consider rolling over that time, I would limit it. You know, if you're doing 10 hours, say I'll roll over up to 2 hours, but it must be used up that following month. Because then what happens is if you're rolling over a lot of hours and then you're trying to get it all done, and then it can just get really stressful and hard to manage as you're taking on additional clients. So hopefully that answers it. Does anybody else have any last questions before we jump off of here? Because I know I've kept you guys for a little bit longer answering these questions. If nobody has additional questions, then I am going to click off of that. Yeah, okay, I'm going to guess that nobody has any more questions. I hope you guys, you're very welcome. I hope you've learned some things. Listen to this, go through the resources I'm going to send, and you're more than welcome to message me through Facebook or wherever you can find me, and you're very welcome. Clarify those things. So try to keep it simple. Less is more. Don't overcomplicate it. And thanks, ladies. I'll get this recording sent out, and I hope you all have a wonderful Saturday. I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.